Hey guys, how's it going? It is January 28th, a Sunday, 10:37 p.m. Was hoping to have a little bit something going tonight to demonstrate, but unfortunately I have nothing, which kind of sucks because it just didn't go the way I was hoping to. So let me just start. I've gone back and forth a couple times where I've given up looking for now, realizing that I'm going to have to learn something relatively soon. Now you can see I've been into the help files of various just basic commands, for example. It looks as if trying to do something simple in what I guess would be dinosaur programming, or what I consider myself a dinosaur programmer, requires me to use complicated methods. Just basic is not the original basic. It's not the original. For example, the first language that I ever learned was Commodore 64 Basic. But anyways, before I get into that, I wanna clear up a few things just so people understand exactly what's happening. And then for those of you that are, looking for something or expecting something where it comes as far as Run 8, I want to be clear on this. My focus is not on Run 8 right now. And nor is my focus set to be compatible with Run 8 or anything like this. When I mention Run 8, first of all, RTS is RTS. It always has been. It was RTS before Run 8. And by the looks of things, it's going to be RTS once I'm totally, bypassed Run 8, and Run 8 does its own thing and does whatever the hell it's going to do anyways. Because Run 8 is doing what it has to do to basically do what it wants to do. In other words, the team at Run 8 are going to do what they want to do. They might be kind enough to open an XML file for me in version 2, which they were. They were the ones, from what I understand, kept that XML open. Out of all the files they protected, it was the XML file that they left open for the trains. And that was to help RTS, apparently. That's what I've been told. Nobody ever told me that from the team, but are not. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm not too sure where I got that from, but that's what I heard. Let's just say that way without me getting into trouble. So I don't know where I got that from, but somebody told me at a reliable source at one point or another, I forget who, that's why the XML file for the trains were open. Now I'm still getting this question, and we're still talking about, we're in this Sanford substring. Honestly, I wish, this was only back on January 4th. Now, this string has been going long and hard. Unfortunately, it's really has nothing to do with the Sanford sub anymore. This is just going berserk. And I don't know where, there's a lot of time, there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of interest. Some of it's late interest, some of it's, trying to say, well, I'm ready to go. What do you got going for me tonight? I'm not doing anything with Run 8. I've been very clear, and I'll show you the thread, just so everybody's aware. Now, I understand the wiki and the homepage and all that other stuff is still showing stuff. I haven't bothered. This is the least of my worries, the Wikia right now. But what happens is when I check my email, I get messages from the Wikia, and so I will respond to them. So I don't go into the Wikia itself. I go into my email and I get responses, and that's what tells me, okay, somebody's posting in one of your threads. Like, for example, I don't think I'm getting announcements in this thread. Now I come here anyways, regardless, just to see what's going on. But here's the thread right here. And this was posted in the news and announcements boards. I don't know when it was posted, but this is where the new direction. If you guys haven't seen where I'm trying to head, this is it. And I won't repeat everything, but you can see here that 5 days ago I decided that I was going to take it into a new direction. And that was to basically go away from Run 8. So that was my emphasis, and nothing is really going to change the direction I've taken, whether no matter how many people thumbs my video downs or not, you know, and don't like the fact that I'm not posting nice videos of trains running in Run 8. Hey, don't get me wrong, I love Run 8, I really do. But at some point, I've got to go after my passions here. And despite the fact I had a great weekend, and despite the fact that I was getting caught up on stuff, eventually tonight I did start getting into the programming, and this is like Game Maker. I was looking at that, but you can see I got help windows open here. I got multiple various windows trying different things like graphic boxes, which I really don't want to get into. But I'm going to give you just a quick... Now, see, I started this RTS dispatcher. No, I don't want to save the changes. So I started with something really simple, which basically... No, that doesn't do it right. I did that wrong. Okay, I gotta end that program because that's already crashed. Oh, control break, not control end. Yep. So, yes. So this was something as simple as that, getting it into a loop and being able to manipulate time, because time was going to be essential. That's not exactly how I envisioned it doing. Now, mind you, you can slow that down so it's not flittering as much. Like, you can go like this. Let me just show you here. Bear with me here. So I know how I know what I'm doing as far as the commands that I'm used to. So if I'm going to, for y equals 1 to 10,000, next y, there's also a timer command too I could use. But let's say, you see how that slows that down, right? So that's fine and all, which is great. But at some point, it's got to read an in key. What the command that used to work for that is a get command. Now, I've used get before. Here is something I didn't expect. If I'm to go into the index here of all the various help commands, and I look for the help on the get command, you can see it's down here. Whoops. See, now that's a little bit different. Get number 1. This statement reads the entire record and files variable until the field statement. That's not how the get command that I knew used to work. And I don't even see the get command in there. So get number 1, get number 3. The statement reads an entire record and fills the variables. You see, I've never seen the field statement associated with a get statement before. But anyways, get used to be, this is just basic. This isn't the basic that I knew. get is a command that reads keyboard input. Usually it reads one character. However, there are ways, even in Visual Basic, that I use where it could recognize a key. So what I wanted to do was just speed up the time or slow down the time, and that was important because in order to demonstrate a dispatcher screen, and it wasn't going to be pretty, it just was something that I could get my logic going. That there's suddenly now I'm at what I guess you would call a programmer's writer's block, because suddenly I'm like, okay, well, I've never really done that in just Basic. So now I have to figure out, how do I do it? How do I get that one key in there while still trying to make it, you know, it doesn't have to be, this part here doesn't matter. I could keep it like this all day long, as long as it does the logic that I want it. I don't know why I saved that, but anyways, well, it's saved in there now, so no, I don't want to code. Let me try this one more time here. No, I got an XY in there, I see. Okay. So even if it looks like that, as long as I'm getting it to logic, the whole idea there was I wanted to play around with the various timers, maybe even, you know, find a way where it just reads a keyboard input. What I'm getting at is I'm finding it's going to take a lot more. In fact, it's almost going to require me getting into the graphics side a lot quicker than I was wanting to get into it. Now, eventually I have to get into the graphics anyways, so it's not a matter of you know, it's not a matter that when, or how would I say, it's not a matter of getting into the graphics. I know I'm going to have to. It's just a question of when. The when I do not want this soon, because that would require me to go into it and basically do a lot of research, a lot of trial and error, a lot of stuff that I'm not very familiar with. Back in the day, I could program machine language in Commodore 64. I could program Commodore 64. I could also program various Office programs. Office programs are totally different than game programs. So if I was to show you the bits of the code for, say, for example, well, let me see if I can find that. Don't save the changes. Doesn't matter. Where is it? Good question. I don't even know where my RTS code is. Now let me see if I can find it in the history here. I don't see it. I got RTS Dispatcher, which is probably the newest module. Save changes? No. Okay, here. Let me just type in a search for RTS. I see RTS2. Pictures, manual. Well, I can't even find my source code right now. It's so far, which kind of sucks because I gotta find it. Would you quit asking me to save the damn program? Let me just check something here. There it is. So you can see with RTS here, I have got plenty of various. This is the RTS code. I'm into loops. I'm into prints. I'm in. You know, I'm not getting into anything that's really that major. Now, when you're dealing with logic, you shouldn't have to get into graphics either. If you're just dealing with logic-driven ifs, ands, while, random number generation, etc., you really don't need to get into all of that. And as you can see, basically I started out, I can show you that just, you know, some of the headers of the old, and this is compatible with version 1 with some of the old headers. train types, looking into files. I can deal with file operations. I can deal with if else, nested ifs, nested ifs, all of this, and then various algebra, communicate. All of this I wrote. And yes, Mike came on as a programmer later on and actually got into some more advanced. He found some more advanced features, and he even wrote some other code outside of RTS that assisted the version 1 of RTS. So Mike was starting to do some things, but the majority of this, what you see here, the code, was pretty much basically me, and then Mike came along and all he did was he found some very easy ways to exploit the XML track data files. And he found a few ways which I was hung up on, various things with the XML, and why a null index was 0, and a few other little things that I couldn't quite figure out why Run 8 was doing their XMLs a certain way. And I asked, even when back in the day, I'd asked John, I didn't really get. I didn't get an explanation that I understood, and I didn't want to bug him anymore, so I didn't bother. So that's just the way it was. So anyways, long story short, with what's going on, now I'm at a bit of a, unfortunately, how would you say? I wanted to really, I was looking this weekend, and I was looking at what I had ahead of me. And I thought, yeah, I was looking forward to it. I was looking forward to it still Friday. A little bit scared because there is a lack of confidence going on here too. Because I know I'm getting into certain code that I haven't written in, it's getting on to decades now. At least, I mean, you look at all the business programming and dealing with files and numbers, getting into even Commodore machine code. That the last time I was into Commodore 64 machine code was when I was in college. So we're talking now over 20 years ago. So that was my first trip into assembly. Now, mind you, I had 2 years of programming experience under me as well. So I've been in languages such as Powerhouse. I played around with C a little bit. That was mainly where I learned in school. Something called Power C, RPG, various little things. But for the most part, even DBase 4, which really isn't a programming language, it's a pseudo language. It's more of a database program back in the day. And I wrote entire business systems in DBase 4. And it's more of a scripting, I guess, nowadays. The problem is with the more, you got to think back then, Windows was not the only way to run a program. You can run things in this little baby right here, which if I can go into this and see, this is the, whoa, hello. That should, yeah, see? So these commands right here, as you can see, I know the commands because this is basically what used to be DOS, or the disk operating system. So I know batch processing, copy cons, edit lin, or edlin, I think it was. Hell, Commodore 64, poke 53280, 0 would turn the background, what was it, the background to black. 53281 would change the border color. You could literally go into various characters of the screen and manipulate them, which means you were already in a graphics window because you had the resolution set, you had everything. You had everything that you needed. It's a different, it's a whole different game now because What I'm trying to do, first and foremost, is deal with the logic. A lot of people don't understand what exactly is going on. I'm trying my best to explain this on the forums. It doesn't seem to be getting. We got this Sanford sub string that just keeps on going on and on about Sanford sub. Sanford sub is dead. I mean I can't really say it any clearer than that. It's dead. I mean, there is probably a, I don't know, 1% chance that I'll ever get a server up for Sanford sub. I've had servers for California at one point. I even considered putting up a pseudo 24/7 server again. If I was to put up another server on my own, a dedicated server that somehow had something to do with demand or dispatching or whatever, I would have to get another copy of Run 8 version 2. Considering the fact that they're talking about Run 8 version 3 coming out at the end of the year, I'm not making that investment. And in fact, I wouldn't even touch it right now. So, I mean, although if money wasn't an issue and I could just go ahead and try something, I would, but come weekends, the server would be shut down because my son used to actually, the way the servers used to work, or at least the way Run 8 version 1 worked, was you can run the server without using the graphics. You can't do that anymore in version 2. So you don't have a dedicated server that can sit in the background. I can't use my client computer because, hell, I have a hard enough time running various programs like Subsistence. If I'm running it with my son, he's running on his computer on the weekends, I'm running on mine. Now mind you, we're only playing maybe for 6 hours or whatever, and then we spend a lot more of the time on YouTube on my computer or whatever, or we go out for walks and do other things, and he goes to karate, etc. So he's not using that much time on that computer, but that computer was always really supposed to be his computer eventually. Before even version 2 came out, it's 11, just coming up to 11 o'clock now as I see my screen has changed. But anyways, I'm not going to be too much longer with this tonight because I really don't want to get into too much more of this because I feel like a broken record at this point. So like I said, I ran into a block as far as getting the programming going. And that's okay. That doesn't mean I've given up. It just means now I got to learn. And what I didn't want to do is spend more time planning. I know exactly how I want RTS to work. I know exactly. I mean, I know I'm getting. I saw some ideas tonight about various ways of, light bulbs going off, and Quincy had mentioned something, and he's still offering his help and everything like that. It was premature of me to go out there and ask for a programmer, especially when, number one, it was probably better that I didn't get any serious offers to program. Now, I've had offers to help, but even Quincy said on the very first post, he was saying, unless you're full blown, into it, or you're gonna go all the way. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, no, I can't even do that to any I can't put any programmer through that. Asking for a programmer is ridiculous. Because I'm going to be the one because things change with me so freaking quick as far as goals or how I want to go with it. It's totally indecisive. And basically I have to get into a system where I do little things, the little things that start building into something bigger. The little thing here was simply, it has nothing to do with Run 8, was simply to get the AI mechanism working, independent of Run 8. This has nothing to do with Run 8. I'm telling you that right now. I'm not worried about Run 8 compatibility or anything like that, because number one, I have no way of knowing how I can even communicate with Run 8. So I'm not going to wait for Run 8 to do anything. I am fully committed to creating a standalone program. Starting as of tonight, I was ready to start the code on the AI dispatching module. Once I have the AI dispatching module working and it's demonstrated and it's working at least well enough to not cause issues. I'm not expecting the AI to be perfect. It's just like when you see various games that are programmed that have AI in it. Sports games comes to mind. Even Subsistence, they have AI hunters, for example. Sometimes the AI is too good. Like it's too precise. With dispatching, I think it's more of a human complicated thing that the AI is not going to be as good as the human, which is okay. I'm okay with that. It doesn't have to be perfect as long as it keeps the flow going and is safe. It has to be safe. It can't go creating any type of the backlog isn't the word I'm looking for. I would say cornfield meat is the word. And if you've ever heard of the term cornfield meat, what that basically means is a train comes up to another train, comes up to a red signal. You've probably seen it maybe back in the days of Microsoft Train Simulator, or even it can happen in Run 8 as well. In fact, it can happen in Run 8 quite dangerously if a dispatcher doesn't know what he's doing. Because all he has to do is run a train out of a controlled siding going one way. The dispatcher runs another train out of a controlled siding going the other way, and they're heading towards each other. There's no safety mechanism in there to prevent a locking block between the two control points on single track. So it's very easy, unless you're an external dispatcher where it shuts it down, but then there's still a lot of safety features that should go into play to prevent a certain entry into a single track system between two sidings. So what I would have to do is I would have to have the trains not only meet at that first available siding, but it has to know based on train length, priority. There's a few other variables that come into mind, or doesn't come to mind off the top of my head, but I know I've had a list of them in my, in basically mental notes or whatever. You gotta have the train length taken into consideration. The example I used the other night was Waylong. You've got that being one of the shorter sidings. If you've ever dispatched the Mojave sub, which I have plenty of times, you have to be careful of pre-planning too far ahead without checking the length first. In other words, for every safe meet, and what I mean safe optional meet, when I say that whole 30-minute cycle, you have to have a safe spot to go to. If you cannot get a safe spot to go to, the train has to stay at the last safe spot. In other words, what I mean by safe spot is where another train can get around you. Ditto for any other train either opposing or following. It has to have a safe spot where it is fine, it is out of the way, and at least one train can get around. So that's how the AI would work. Now, what ends up happening though, now single track is actually the easiest one to, it's the hardest one to dispatch because there's so much work involved, but it's actually the easiest one to program an AI simply because you're not dealing with multiple paths. Well, you are. In theory, you could decide whether or not to take the siding or hold the main. But you're not dealing too much more than that other than the variables I mentioned and having the system. If I was to do needles, you would think for the most part, and being really safe, I could do that. I could do a double track one and program it that way. But the problem with that is to utilize the crossovers and to utilize overtaking and to utilize there's a lot more variables involved in that. You have to time the overtake, you have to time the estimated time it will take to overtake, you have to know the HPT, how much you're going to gain, what his estimated time is going to be for the next safe spot, etc., where he's going to be able to hold. Is it going to slow the train, one of the other trains down? You have to put that into consideration. There's so many different variables that go into it. If you want to be really efficient, programming that into a computer is very difficult. However, now I say that programming is very difficult. However, that's where you can build on the AI. You can make it smarter. You can make it more intense, more being able to calculate these things. Calculations is not a problem with me. I can write in all kinds of various calculations and truth tables. Truth tables are basically where you put zeros and ones out of a matrix of different results, and you come up with different different inputs. You come up with different results. So the logic of my programming is fine. That's not going to be the issue. The issue right now is getting started, which unfortunately at this point means I'm going to have to get into the graphics side of, either I'm going to have to get into the graphics side of Just Basic, which may lead me to Liberty Basic eventually too, which Just Basic can do a lot of this for now. I don't need to get into Liberty Basic, which I want to avoid until I know for sure what I'm getting into. And there's no harm in programming it in Just Basic if I can get it going. So that'll be fine. I just have to think about this a little bit tomorrow. I have to do a little bit of brainstorming on this. There's other, like I said, there's other things I've been looking at. I don't want to really get into the graphics side yet, because I was looking at this one. There's also the common ones like Unity and Unreal 4. You can do 2D stuff in them. One thing I'm finding with Unreal 4, and I'm looking into some of the scripting languages that they use, and some of them are supposed to be very powerful and blah blah blah. The problem is when they make something that is very easy to use, a lot of times you lose a lot of its functionality, which is also why Unreal is capable of going into the C++ stuff, because that'll fill in the gaps. Although the more powerful the languages that are the scripting languages, the easier it is. It's kind of like DBase used to be able to go into SQL. Well, SQL I know as well. So I know a lot of these various languages or formats or systems or whatever you want to call it, but getting into the game programming, I have some experience in game programming, but I don't have a huge amount of experience in game programming. Graphics eventually I'm going to have to tackle, but I'm not ready to tackle it yet, because right now all I want to make sure is, can I make sure that the trains don't run into each other? Can I make sure the trains will stop? And it doesn't have to be perfect. Even if it's somewhat inefficient and it's kind of following each other and it's only going to make safe passes. It's kind of like if you're driving on a 2-lane highway, for example, and you're a more cautious driver and you want to overtake a train. Well, overtake a train. You want to overtake another car and you got traffic coming the other way. Do you if you're aggressive, basically what's happening is you're going to come out to the road. The other transport truck that's coming below a hill that you don't see is going to is either going to have to, flash his lights at you or start honking at you to get the hell out of the way, or the guy you're trying to overtake is going to have to stop because you were way too aggressive. Now, of course, in railroads they have signals, which, of course, if you know, if you take an overtake, it's not the end of the world. You just, you know, you're stopping trains unnecessarily to try to have somebody overtake, and you're stopping the flow of the railroad basically. So you don't want to have these added unnecessary stops if you can help it. So, but anyways, hopefully that answers some of the confusion that I am seeing on some people are, you know, and I'm getting offers of help. I'm getting various, you know, ideas. I'm also having people that are asking me what's going on. You know, are you gonna be running? Are you gonna be running the server? Are you gonna be doing this? I'd love to update every file in the Wikia. I'm not worried about the Wikia. That's why I post messages in the forum. This is why I do YouTube videos. So I try to keep the communication lines open as much as possible, and try to be open with you guys so that you know exactly what it is I'm thinking. And yeah, I get the thumbs down. I honestly, I don't give a crap anymore about that. I had 2 thumbs down on the other video I did the other night where I was all positive about the direction I was going, and maybe 2 people who like Run 8 doesn't like it. Like I said before, Run 8, you know, I still have my rail driver here. It's here for me. If I fail, if I can't get this going, then that's fine. But I have confidence enough in me that I'm going to find a way. I found a way to get Run 8 to do what I needed to do for 5-6 years. I don't see why I can't use my skill set when basically all it's a matter of me doing is learning something. If I have to learn something, if I have to re-educate myself, if I have to learn new techniques, by the looks of it right now, I'm going to have to get into just basic, and I'm going to have to try playing around with the graphics. Because I take it what's going to happen is I'm going to have to get into the graphics side a little bit sooner than I wanted, in order for me to get into the text side. I've done a little bit of graphics. I'm just trying to think of which ones. Visual Basic wasn't really graphics. It was the Bridgemaster program I did for a few years. 2 years ago, a very, very small program was done in Visual Basic. I don't even have Visual Basic on my system, but I believe that was done in Visual Basic. I had another, I think I had another similar program that I did for a model railroad club, but all of them were based on more of an object-oriented IDE style interface. It was a very, very small program that all it did was basically randomly say, you know, hey, this is when a boat wanted access to the bridge, and you know, you gave it this access, and then it put a timer in there for how long it was going to take for the bridge to close, kind of like what TSCAD already does, you know, with their dispatch software. So really, once TSCAD came out with it, I kind of just said, okay, well, that's really the end of Bridgemaster. There's nothing more. I was going to go so far as to put in some audio and a few other different things, like a boat honking a horn or something like that, to kind of get your attention if you're running trains. And that's the other thing. I know it's 11:15 and I'm going on about this, but my biggest take back as far as why I still mention Run 8 and AI is, if there was the AI dispatcher capability, then I can see doing something like a Sanford sub, or even further. I could even see purchasing expansion routes into California if there was an AI hump, if there was an AI, you know, if you had the ability to AI hump, if you had the ability to AI switch. There's a lot of potential there where you really get to the point where you're not relying on somebody. As much as I've tried with Run 8, I've tried to get it so that, number one, I've tried to get as much interest as possible. Unfortunately, and I did get some interest, and there's some very, like real interest. That's not the point, though. It's more of knowing when and times, and when you rely on too little people, all it takes is one or two, and then things change really rapidly, and suddenly you're back to square one. And I know that from experience with Run 8. So that's, and besides, I'm still looking at a not so much short term. I'm not worried about short term profit here. I'm looking at a potential of, within, say, a little over a year, of starting to make a second residual income. So I'm okay right now. I'm fine, but I keep Run 8 in mind because I believe Run 8 has the potential. But it all depends on what Run 8 wants to do. And from what I've seen, Run 8 has no interest in offering somebody who wants to build a route, or somebody who wants to develop extra software or anything for it. They've never really, it hasn't been something that they've been, and it's too bad, because I would be willing to do those things, but there's been really no interest in those things. It's never been opened up to say, hey, we're looking for developers of routes, or hey, we're looking for this. And I can get into more aspects of it, but I'm not even gonna go that far. There's, put it this way, it's not gonna happen. At least that, from what I see. There is more of a chance that I would get back into Sanford sub. If I give 1% chance I'd get into Sanford sub, I would say there is probably a 1/100th of a percent chance that I would ever be able to do something for Run 8 again, in some capacity, where, especially something where I would actually make a little bit of residual income off of, let alone even be associated like beta or anything like that. It's just not going to happen. I've burned too many bridges, whether it be my brutal honesty or hard feelings or who knows what. It's no big deal. I'm not worried about it. Like I said, that's something that really isn't of consideration right now. So I'm just rambling on. So it's like 10:20. So I'm going to end this right now as it is. And yeah, if I'm always open for suggestions. You guys can keep on posting suggestions and ideas, various things, maybe certain languages you might think that might be pretty easy for me to pick up for at least this project. Programs that can do it. I know, like I said before, I was actually looking into the random number generator is important to me, as you've probably heard in some of my rants about Run 8. It's important that I have a properly seeding random number generator. I was looking into, so you can tell I'm serious about this, because I've been looking into the various forums and the various articles. The language, or whatever the hell you call it, the scripting language for Unreal 4, from what I understand, the random number generator will work in the editor and it will seed it properly, but it will not do it once it's compiled. It will continue to call the same numbers of the seed. It won't. It basically will do the same thing, and that's because I take it the seed itself goes into the binary, I think. I'm not sure exactly how that works or why it does it that way, but for whatever reason it doesn't call either upon the system clock for another number or another seed or whatever, but so you end up getting the same thing, whereas in the editor before it goes to binary it does work, if that makes sense. And if that doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal. But just like, I'm not giving up just yet. This is just unfortunately a small false start. And the good thing about this is, unlike some of the places where I've been slamming my head in a wall, there is so much things out there that I can learn to get this working. There's plenty of languages. I'm just looking right now at something. Just Basic is probably still going to be the ideal option. I'm just going to have to do a little bit of research. So if you guys don't hear me from YouTube for a while, don't worry about it. Or if you don't hear me on the forums or whatever, things are quiet and you're wondering, well, what am I doing? It's not because I'm uninterested. I am interested. It's because I need to research and do the due diligence of figuring out exactly how I want to get it. As soon as I've made some breakthroughs and I got the code at least started to where I can get some results, I'll certainly share the screenshots and even videos on YouTube of how the program is progressing. I'm not going to be showing code. I'm just going to be showing you how it looks like, the raw data and the way it behaves. So unlike what I just showed you, some of the code samples there of practically nothing other than the old RTS software, that's not it. And this RTS is not going to be compatible with version 1. It's not going to be compatible with Run A. It's not going to be anything like that. It's going to be an entire new program. And right now it's being dubbed RTS Dispatcher. However, that's going to morph into other things like RTS Switcher, various modules. Eventually it is going to morph even further. Ideally, I don't know if it's going to morph into a 2D game. It might be a freight yard manager type game. It could be anything at this point. How it goes beyond that is not of my concern. I'm going to have it as a life of its own. As long as I know what I can I'm still sorry. I'm still like you say, I got all this stuff in my head. I just got to get this out into the program. And yeah, it'd be easy for me to get somebody's help, and I appreciate the offers of the help, but trying to get somebody to help me on this, other than pointing me in the right direction or giving me a little ideas of code snippets or links to something that is useful of what I'm saying right now. I don't want to be spending my time asking questions and getting answers, other than saying here's the trouble I'm having, which I've already indicated what the issue is. So I mean, and I've already had some examples, by the way, but Quincy's given me some great examples. Quincy's been the only one really at this point who has offered any help. So I do appreciate it. It does. I want to make sure I make sure I get that out there. I do appreciate the offers, and I will continue to answer the questions. But I already have an idea of where I want to take it, and this is ultimately the direction I'm going. I'm not too sure if it's a direction or what you were thinking, but anyways, what was I saying? I got totally. This is another problem with my brain is I get easily sidetracked, and it's 11:26. Even though I'm not tired. That's another indication that I'm into it, because I'm not tired. I don't want to go to bed. So yeah, it's going to morph into something, but ultimately it's going to be how well the dispatcher works and how well the AI switching works and how well the AI humping works. If I can get those things to be fully automated as much as possible, what that basically means is the micromanagement that you see in both, whether it be servers, running a server through Run 8 or any other train simulator, or any type of, actually, if you want to use an example, if you're looking at some of the various tycoon games out there, because Tycoon's something that I'm looking into as well. This could be a combination Tycoon/simulator. This could be a lot of things. I don't know where that part is going just yet. I'm not worried about that. The AI portion is where I want to get my ideas of reducing as much overhaul on micromanagement as possible, because any tycoon game that I've seen, for the most part, really isn't about running a company. It's more about setting up the route, setting up where the line goes, making sure that the trains, this train's not working and nobody knows how to get the train to go, or nobody knows. Basically, when you're running something or you're a manager, somebody's got to come to you and basically say, okay, this train's not working. What are you going to do, boss? No, idiot. You're the guy I hired to make sure they work. You make it work. What do you suggest? You see what I'm saying? I just played City Skylines. It was on my YouTube channel not that long ago. I swear I'm going to end this in 2 minutes. It was on my YouTube channel not too long ago, and you have to click the demolish buttons to demolish houses because they're eyesores in the community. Well, hold on. If they're eyesores in the community, whoever is owning the property or taking over the property wouldn't they, and it's zoned already, wouldn't they just go in and do it? Especially when it doesn't cost you a cent to do it. Why do I have to micromanage and do that? Let somebody, who I work for do it. That's the kind of stupidity some of these games has. And, I hate micromanaging games. When I'm in a game, I want to relax, or I want to have fun, or I want to be part of get into a certain role. And that's the thing. Anything that I want to get into a certain role, whatever be it a route in Run 8, be it a server in Run 8, and I want the full route. I want the full everything. I want to be able to be dispatcher one day, passenger train the other day, regardless of if we got 10 people on or 1 person on. So yeah, I'm mentioning Run 8 again, but I use that as an example. Unfortunately, Run 8's not there right now, and because of that, I've lost my interest in it for the time being. I'm now focused on RTS as a standalone, and I will develop something that will work, and I'm not worried about 3D. All I'm worried about is getting the AI to work first. We'll worry about 2D, 3D, whatever later on. So anyways, way overdue for time. Apologize for that, but I just want to make sure I get that out there. So anyways, that's it, and that's one of the things I'm looking at, but I'm probably not going to bother with that. Just something I'm keeping in mind. But anyways, that's all for now, guys. Have a good one, and yeah, it might be a little while before I have another video, unless I can make some progress, because I got a funny feeling this is going to be a long learning experience for me for the next little while. So questions and comments, posts, feel free. I still watch it every day, so let me know.